Icon, how are we doing this morning? You good? Alive, active, awesome. Hey, I've been with the church. My name's Benji. I'm on the teaching team here. I've been with the church since the beginning. I don't know if I've ever spoke 2 weeks back to back. And so it's fun to kind of get to conclude the series we've been in over the last, this is our 5th week, called Summer on the Mount. Now, I actually want to start where I left off last week. And what I did at the end of service, if you weren't with us, is I just kind of talked about Six Flags a little bit. And so what I want to do just to start is, how many in the room this morning would say you love roller coasters, you love theme parks, you love Six Flags? Just show of hands. Yes, all over the room. Okay, you are not my people. Just to shoot straight with you, I am terrified of roller coasters. And not to just rehash something, but at the end of last week, I said, hey, some of you, if I told you I have 2 free passes, I'm giving them to you, you're going to Six Flags tomorrow, you don't have to go to work, you'd be excited, you'd be buying a fast pass, you'd be thinking about what rides. You probably wouldn't sleep that much the night before because there'd be all this anticipation and excitement for Six Flags. And then I said, for me, if you were to give me 2 free passes to Six Flags, I would not be sleeping, but I'd be not sleeping out of terror, okay? I'm terrified of roller coasters. I would be finding the longest food lines so that I could get out of riding rides, okay? And I don't like it. Now, I don't know if there's somebody in here who's conspiring against me. I don't know if there's someone in here who's mad at me or frustrated, but I gotta tell you, Sunday night, I got a text message. And I brought receipts. Old people in the room, when you say you brought receipts, that means you brought proof, okay? Here's some proof. I got a text Sunday night. Yo, what are you and Sydney doing on Friday, during the day? And my heart starts beating a little faster, because sometimes when you get a text like this, you think someone's gonna ask you to help them move or something, and you gotta figure out a way to get out of it, right? I'm I don't know what he wants, but so then here I respond, and I go, yo, we may be moving in the morning, because we're moving actually, but possibly free that afternoon. What's yo? I meant what's up, but I'm not good at texting, okay? And then he responds, and here's what he says back, is he goes, Stevie and I were wondering if y'all would be down to go to Six Flags. This is Sunday night at 5:19. People, don't make sermon analogies like this. He goes, we can for sure get you both in for free on Friday if you're down. And I thought I was about to have a heart attack. I thought I was about to collapse. And I'm like, what do I do now? Because I told all of you last Sunday that your outlook determines your experience and that you can head into things head first, and that, man, it's about how you look at things, right? It could be an awesome experience if you choose to go into it that way. And I was a little panicked, but you know what? Sydney and I'm happy to report we faced our fears on Friday, and we rode 3 roller coasters, y'all. Come on. And it was awesome. In fact, I think I brought a video to show you. This is, you can watch it. No, I promise, I actually did ride them. I actually did. Here's a picture of us on Superman. And look at, Stevie was a cheerleader growing up. And so she's she scoped out where the camera was. And she's like, hey. And then Sydney's having the time of her life. Dustin, well, he looks a little scared. But I'm terrified, y'all. My grip, I'm white knuckle gripping that thing. But it actually was a lot more fun than I anticipated. So, yeah. Anyway, we're going to jump in this morning. And here's what I want to do is, if you haven't been with us, I'll just catch you up real quick. This is week 5, kind of the finale of this series that we've been in, talking about Jesus' most famous sermon he ever gave, the Sermon on the Mount. And so today what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to the very end of his sermon, and I want to look at sort of the closing paragraph. I want to look at the words he leaves his listeners with, his readers with, right there at the end. How does Jesus end this sermon? And he kind of gives readers, listeners, one final picture. And so let's look at this together today as we jump in. Here's what it says. It says, these words I speak to you are not incidental additions to your life, homeowner improvements to your standard of living. They are foundational words, words to build a life on. And if you work these words into your life, you are like a smart carpenter who built his house on solid rock. And the rain poured down, and the river flooded, and the tornado hit, but nothing moved that house. It was fixed to the rock. And then the next verse goes on and says, but if you just use my words in Bible studies and you don't work them into your life, you are like a stupid carpenter who built his house on the sandy beach. And when a storm rolled in and the waves came up, it collapsed like a house of cards. And this is Jesus' final invitation. This is sort of this last appeal. And I said it last week, and I'll say it again this week. When Jesus is speaking in this sermon, he's constantly giving you and I, he's constantly giving listeners and readers an invitation into seeing the world through a new perspective. And you have to think about being an OG listener in this scenario. If you're sitting on the mountain listening to Jesus speaking in this moment, you've heard Jesus touch on a number of topics. And if you've sat in here over the last 4 weeks, you've heard us recap and preach sermons on a number of topics that Jesus hit on. By this point, if you're sitting on the side of the mountain, you've heard Jesus talk about anger and lust and comparison. You've heard Jesus talk about selfishness and pride and money and all these things. And so you're kind of building, and it gets to sort of this crux, this climactic moment. You get to this crescendo. And what does he invite his listeners to do? Examine your foundation. He gets to the end of all of it. He's talked on all these different topics, and he ends with this invitation for you to re-examine what you've built your life on. See, how often do we think about what we're building? How often do you consider what you're building with your life? If what you're spending your time doing, what you're spending your money on, how you use your energy and resource, how often do you just stop to examine the foundation of what you're building? See, if you're anything like me, I get busy. I'm a busybody, and I just do 100 things. I go 1,000 miles a minute, and it's hard for me to stop and to re-examine the foundations. But as Jesus gets to this final paragraph, as Jesus thinks through, how do I want to close this most famous sermon I'll ever give? He says, examine your foundations. So how often are you thinking about what you're building towards? See, I think what we often do is we kind of build our lives and then we're like, fingers crossed that this works, that this is secure, that there's some sort of foundation that's worth standing on. And Jesus invites us today to stand on something firm, a solid rock, a firm foundation. There's a story that I heard about some farmers. It was one morning, it was in 1974. These 7 farmers in China, they go out to the side of this mountain and they start digging. And their hopes are they're going to dig a well for their village, for their community. And so they get about 13 feet down into the earth on the side of this mountain and they hit something. And what they hit isn't rock, and what they hit isn't just clay. What they hit is terracotta clay. Now, terracotta is used in a number of pottery things. People build plates out of it and cups out of it, all sorts of stuff. But in this instance, what they hit was actually a terracotta warrior that looks something like this. Now, imagine you're trying to build a well and you come across a warrior in the dust and in the dirt. This thing is built to scale, life size, and they do some more digging and pull this warrior out of the dust and out of the dirt. So they're like, well, we're not obviously building a well here anymore. And so they call in the archaeologists, and the archaeologists come in and they begin to excavate the site. And a story is uncovered on the side of this mountain. And the story goes back all the way to 210 BC. Well before Jesus ever hits the scene, right? 210 BC, there is a guy by the name of Qin Shi Huang in China. He's very famous in China's history. He's responsible for some very big things like the original Great Wall. He's also responsible for unifying 7 different districts of China into one nation. Now, I think maybe one of the largest in the world. And in that uncovering, what they uncover in the dust and in the dirt, is more of a story about his life. Because see, while he did some kind of great sort of epic things, he also was like internally tormented and tortured. In the process of trying to unify these 7 sort of territories of China, he kills more than 1 million people because he's so hungry for power and authority. And he builds his life on this foundation of just give me as much power as I can possibly get. It's said that Qin Shi Huang was in this place of wanting to stay young forever because he wanted to have power for as long as possible. And so while he would be trying to unify these places, he'd be coming in with extreme power and extreme authority, he was also looking for the fountain of youth, which wasn't uncommon in that day and in that time. And what they found was they found Mercury, and Mercury has all these weird attributes to it. And in that day, people actually thought that Mercury had godlike powers. And so Qin Shi Huang makes this decision that he's going to start ingesting mercury daily. Now, you and I know mercury isn't a vitamin, okay? Mercury poisoning is no joke, but he didn't know that. And some of us laugh today because we're like, man, that guy's an idiot, right? But just side note, separate sermon, this is for free. Some of you today, you think that you're doing things that are adding value to your life, that are your fountain of youth, and they just might be silently killing you. Just a side note, that's for free, okay? Here, back into the story. Eventually, if you ingest enough mercury, you get mercury poisoning. And so Qin Shi Huang gets mercury poisoning, and he's on his deathbed, and this lust for power and authority changes into something completely different. And as he realizes he's going to die, he starts to just build on this foundation of fear. He goes, I've wronged so many people in my life. I've done so much bad in my life that when I die, all the people I've wronged, the 1 million people I've killed, he actually thought they were going to come after him in the next life. And so he gets slaves to build him terracotta warriors. And he has 7,000 unique terracotta warriors built and placed around his grave so that he would have an army to fight for him in the next life. Now, in your life, you're not probably going to build an army of 7,000 people and place them around your grave. Maybe I'm underestimating you, I don't know. But here's the deal. In your life, you will be tempted to build on all sorts of wrong things, including fear. And sometimes we can't see it in the physical. We don't see it like this. But oftentimes we spend our time and our energy and our resource building on all sorts of wrong things. And some of us today, if we were to just take 10 minutes and to analyze, what am I building with my life? Am I building out of insecurity? It's like we construct our little terracotta warriors. It's like we construct our little house on sand. Some of us, we're building out of fear. Some of us, we just need as much power and authority and leadership as we can get, not because we have the right motives in our heart, but because we need the power and authority. Other times, it's good things. Like often I find myself, it's not that I'm building on bad things. It's just that I'm sort of just doing what feels right. I see other people doing things, so I live in a comparison game and I kind of, oh yeah, this is probably the stage of life where I build this. And I don't question and I don't think about it. I just build. And I love this invitation of Jesus right here at the end of his most famous sermon to go, hey, we've talked about all these different topics. And if you haven't read the Sermon on the Mount, I encourage you, sit in those 3 chapters. They're powerful words of Jesus. But he gets to the end and he just goes, hey guys, would you re-examine your foundations? Would you re-examine your foundations? What does Jesus say? He says this. He says, these words I speak to you, they're not incidental additions to your life. They're not homeowner improvements to your standard of living. What are they? They are the foundational words. They're words to build a life on. And this is the perfect finale, because the question it leaves you and I with is, what's my foundation? And what does it look like for Jesus to become my foundation? What does it look like for us as Christ followers to build a life on the solid rock that is Jesus? What does it look like to have that sort of firm foundation? See, after a while in church, like if you hang out here long enough, you're going to be able to know some facts about Jesus. At some point, you may have heard a verse enough times to have it memorized. You may be able to say some eloquent prayer, but I almost feel like Jesus pokes at us here as he concludes the Sermon on the Mount, and he goes, hey guys, It was never about any of those things. I want you to re-examine what you're building your life on. What's underneath all of it? Because it was never about dressing up in religion. It was more about Jesus being the solid rock from which all other things flow in your life. And Jesus gives and extends this invitation to us. Because see, there's a big difference between knowing something and living something, right? There's a big difference between head knowledge, knowing the facts, and actually having it intersect with your lifestyle, your decision making, how you parent, how you go to school, the way you work, what you choose to do with your life. There's a way big difference between being able to give lip service to something and talk about something and knowledge and actually having it be in the very fabric of your life, soaking into every corner. And Jesus is going, I want these words, I want my life to be your foundation. I want it to be your floor. I want it to be what you build from. And I wonder how many times we know the right things to say, but it's not necessarily in the very fabric of our floor. There's this interesting podcast I listened to a while back. It's a podcast called Hidden Brain. The episode specifically is called Close Enough, The Lure of Living Through Others. The Lure of Living Through Others. And there's this interview with this guy, Ed O'Brien, and Ed's this interesting character. He's a social psychologist at the University of Chicago, and he does these experiments. And so like in one experiment, he has this group of 400 people, okay? And these 400 people, he has all of them watch a how-to YouTube video on how to do the tablecloth trick. Just show of hands, you guys know what the tablecloth trick is? Yes, some of you are nodding your heads. I'll just explain it real fast if you don't know it. It's like if you put a tablecloth on the table, then you put all the fine china, the plates, the cups, the whole deal, and then you're gonna do this trick where you pull the tablecloth out from under all those things, and none of the things are supposed to fall or break or whatever. You may have seen it. If you haven't, it's pretty impressive. Go watch a video after service. But here's the deal. He has 400 people watch this how-to video, and every time they watch it, he tracks their confidence. And every time they get to watch a how-to video on how to do it, they feel like they're actually getting better at being able to perform the trick. They've never done it. They've just watched the video. In another experiment, he has two groups of people, and they all are going to learn how to do the moonwalk by watching how-to YouTube videos about the moonwalk. So he has one group of people, kind of group A, and they only get to watch this how-to video once. And then he has group B, and they're allowed to watch it 20 times. And group B is convinced that after watching it 20 times, they're going to be far better than group A because they got to see this how-to video 20 times. But guess what the findings were? Group B didn't perform any better than group A when it actually came time to perform. So they have judges, and the judges sit back and watch all this entire group of people, group A and B. They mix them all together. They all try to do the moonwalk, and they can't figure out who's watched the video once and who's watched the video 20 times. Ed says this, he goes, what's especially interesting for us is some of them told us before they made their attempt, that they're really gonna do it well. These people that watch it 20 times, their confidence is sky high. They're gonna nail this attempt. And only in the act of trying do they realize, oh, I guess I didn't learn nearly as much as I thought just from watching that video. Now, for many of us in the room, we're here and we're doing our best to live in the way of Jesus. I love Sunday mornings. I love experiences like this. In fact, our mission as Icon Church is to help people become more like Jesus. But I wonder how many times we can hear the message, we can pray the prayer, but it doesn't necessarily intersect fully with our lifestyle, right? We know how to pay God lip service. We've kind of watched the how-to video. We've heard the pastor preach 20 times, but does it actually change the way we live? And I think when Jesus invites us to re-examine our foundations, he's going, guys, it's more than just knowing the how-to. It's actually putting into practice what we just talked about. And he's hit on topic after topic after topic, and he's going, this isn't about talking religiously. This is about an actual way of living that would literally determine your lifestyle and the way you interact with the world. And there's a difference between watching and listening to somebody else and knowing how to dress up in religion and all that versus actually living it out. But see, this isn't just something that I wonder for us as Christians, this is something that personally has just been hitting home for me. Because when I examine and re-examine my foundation, even in the last couple weeks, I'm going, man, I don't know if Jesus' words are truly the foundation all the time for me. In fact, just in the last couple weeks, I'm having a conversation with Sydney and I'm going, I think a lot of times for me, and it's probably different vices for different people, right? But for me, success and approval are the same word. There's a lot of times personally where I look at the foundation of my life and I go, I'm just building because I want to look and I want to have the approval of others. And the way that I'm going to get approval of others is by being successful. And I deem approval and success as the same thing, and I make them my foundation and I just build from there and hope it looks good. And that might not be your approach. That might not be your vice. That might not be your thing. But I just wonder if there's ways we think, if there's ways we build in our lives that Jesus is going, hey, I'm giving you an invitation to build on a solid rock, something that actually will stand the test of time. Don't build on just what you think will work. Build on what for sure will work, and that is this cornerstone, this solid rock that is Jesus, and this firm foundation. But so often, I just base my life on things that are temporary, or even if you look at the track record of my decision making and the way that I live my life, I can see times where I built this, and then I've told you this many times, I'm guilty of being very ADD, right? So I'm like, this is gonna be cool, and I just build, and then I get like halfway through, and I'm like, I don't really like that, so then I'm gonna move on. Oh, this is gonna be the thing. This is gonna be the thing. And I build, and I realize, oh, no. And if you've lived any amount of life, right, you've had those moments where you go, this is going to be the thing that fulfills. This is going to be the thing that fills my cup and gives me joy. This is going to be the thing. But I'm just here to tell you, man, eventually your job, the love for just the perfect job and the search for it, it runs out. Having the perfect model family, eventually, that doesn't sustain fully. There's all these things that we chase, security and comfort. There's all these things that we hope for and we long for. And I just wonder if underneath it all, sometimes what happens is we come and we hear the messages and we sit in church and we know how to talk the good game, but we don't actually get back to what Jesus is talking about here at the end of his message. He's going, no. Bake these words of mine into the very fabric of your life. Have them be the foundational words from which you build. Don't just pay me lip service in Bible studies. Don't just be comfortable with religion, but would you actually base your life on me? And I love this invitation of Jesus that's extended our way. Catch this, because this may be you as well. It's not that you're trying to actively run from God. It's not that you're deliberately disobeying. There's just this natural leaning in me and maybe in you towards things other than the firm foundation of Jesus. Have you ever been there? It's not like this deliberate thing in you where you're consciously making decisions in that direction. It's just something that sort of happens naturally. And I think that's why Jesus' invitation is so beautiful to me today as he closes his message, because it's just going, hey, it's just like this loving tap going, hey, just reconsider. Just reconsider what you're building and why you're building it. Let's just re-examine the foundation one more time. But imagine with me just for a minute, what would it look like if you got to build a home and you build your home and you get to the very end of this process and the whole thing looks pretty good and pretty beautiful, and then you go, oh man, but we forgot the foundation. Well, I guess what we could do is we can just throw the foundation, all the cement, all the concrete, whatever, we could throw it on top of the house. That'll work. But isn't that sort of our approach to God sometimes? It's like, I built this beautiful house. God, I'm just going to pour a little bit of you right here on top, and I think that's going to do the trick. We love Jesus as an add-on. But the hard part about Jesus is he was meant to be the foundation. And you know what happens when Jesus becomes the add-on? Is it really just kind of collapses your life. Because Jesus' burden is easy and light, Scripture says. But when you add what's meant to be the foundation onto the ceiling, it collapses the roof. And some of us, we're in this space where we're going, it's kind of frustrating to follow Jesus. And I wonder if it's because so often we don't re-examine the foundation and actually build from there. We just try to kind of sprinkle God on top of an already what we think is an okay life. What does it look like for God to actually be your foundation? What does it look like? Maybe not even just on a Sunday morning, but weekly, maybe even daily for a season to go to God. I just want to keep re-examining my foundation. I want to be built on you. I want to stand firm on things that you would stand firm on. I don't want to sprinkle you on top of an already decent life, but instead I want to live from a place of saying, Jesus, you're our foundation. You're not an add-on. Jesus is our foundation. He's not just an add-on. And here's what I love about Jesus. Because see, in a room this size, there's probably several groups of people. But what he does for each of us, and this is such a beautiful, picture, is he goes, I'm not going to meet you where you wish you were. I'm not going to meet you where you pretend to be. I don't meet you where you think you should be, and I'm just waiting for you to show up. No, he meets you right in the middle of the mess and the chaos of what you're building right now in your life. And I wonder, for us today, what it would look like to just say, hey, Jesus, in the middle of the mess and the chaos of what I've tried to build and what I thought would be successful and what I thought would work, hey, Jesus, you can have this too. God, would you help me to re-examine what I'm standing on, and would you make it this firm foundation? Would you do something in me that I can't do for myself? And as the band comes up and we get ready to close, what I want to do is I just actually want to hit on several groups of people and maybe things that you say you're trying to build on. Or things that as you examine your foundation, you go, man, I've been building in this direction and I'm not sure it's the way of Jesus, and I'd love to build in a different direction. So for some of you today, going back to that terracotta warrior story, some of you build out of fear, out of anxiety, out of worry. And today is an invitation to return to this firm foundation that is Jesus. Today is an invitation to say, God, I'm not going to live like I was on the roller coaster, right? White knuckle grip. Oh, dear God, just hang on for your life and hope you get through it. I was riding the roller coasters this week, and the first one, I closed my eyes for too long, and I got really, really, really dizzy, to the point of I got pretty sick. And for some of you, your worry and your anxiety and your fear, it's like that. You close your eyes through life, and it's just giving you this dizzy feeling because you're going, I'm just trying to hang on, dude. I'm just trying to get through this thing. And I just wonder if someone in the room today would be your opportunity to go, I'm going to re-examine what I've been building on, because there's probably a far better way, and the way comes in the form of a name, and that name is Jesus. And I reopen my hands, and I reopen my life, and I go, man, the things I was anxious about or worried about, they may not go away in a day, but I choose to not just pay God lip service. I want to see him actually change the very foundation of my life. For others of you today, you're at a place where you're just angry. You've built your life out of anger. I'm going to prove the haters wrong. I'm going to prove my parents wrong. I'm going to prove whoever wronged me. I want to just prove to the world that I can do something. You build out of anger. And sarcasm flies, and hate-filled language, and you come into church and you kind of love what we talk about, but it hasn't necessarily become the very foundation. And today's an invitation. The conclusion of this message of Jesus is an invitation to you today to go, I'm just going to re-examine what I'm building, because I think I may get a year down, 10 years down the line, and I may re-examine my foundation and go, I'm building on all the wrong stuff. I don't want to build from a place of anger. I want to build my life on this everlasting, unconditional love, because from that space, that name, Jesus, life flows. I refuse to build on anger, even though my soul may be sometimes prone to it. Maybe you're in my camp today. You're going success and achievement, success and achievement. I got to prove myself. I got to do more. I got to achieve more. I need more platform. I need more performance. I need something that will prove my worth. And this message of Jesus, this foundations, this look and re-examine what you're building on is an opportunity for you today to realize, hey, you've already been approved. You don't have to prove anything. And there's something so beautiful for those that are obsessed with achievement and performance in the room today to go, I don't have to prove and gain God's worth, but instead when I work and I love work, I do that from a place of knowing I've already been graced for the work God's given me. There's something so different about an approach that goes, I'm not trying to gain this approval, but instead I know I'm approved, and now I'll work with 110% of me in the direction of anything Jesus would have for me, because I know my foundation is firm and secure. And today's an invitation to re-examine your foundation and build on all that Jesus has for you. For some of you, you hold a grudge against someone that's wronged you. And I wonder today if Jesus would just invite you to say, hey, maybe there's a better way. Maybe forgiveness is the best way. Maybe in doing so, and here's the deal. Sometimes when pastors preach a message like this, they go, hey, pray about it. Hey, read the Bible, and that's going to be your firm foundation. And I'm all for those things, but I want to be very, very clear. When I say that it actually becomes the ground that you step on, I'm talking you go to that person today and you have a conversation with them and you go, hey, I have either said things that I shouldn't have said. I've held a grudge where I shouldn't have held a grudge. Here's exactly what I was feeling, and I'm asking for your forgiveness. And I promise you that in doing so, you reestablish a foundation that says, I'm built on Jesus, and I'm not just going to pay him lip service, but it's going to be a part of everything I do. That goes for bosses with your employees. That goes for employees with your bosses. What's the culture of honor in your workspace? How do you talk? How do you act in front of someone and behind their back? I'm talking this Jesus ethic, this firm foundation, this Jesus way should intersect and bleed into every single part of your life. Because I believe it's the best way to live. There's something so beautiful about it. The revelation is in the doing, not in the hearing, not in the knowing, not in the writing things down so you have a bunch of notes and you feel more spiritual. The revelation comes in the doing. Because you know what also happens is I realize my need to continue to re-examine my foundation, because I realize there's a big gap between me right now and Jesus. And it somehow in the doing of it, in the practicing of it, it gives me this opportunity to see, oh yeah, God's graced me. He's given me grace and I can extend that other people's way. But I realize how much grace I need as I try to be more like Jesus, and I see that gap is bigger than I thought it was. And so, for us today as Icon Church, would we be people who intentionally build on Jesus as our cornerstone? May we live it out and not just hear things and pay him lip service. Would you stand with me? We're about to close in prayer, and we'll sing a couple final songs.